What is up guys, Stuart Mikkel here of Social Vignerons. Welcome back to another wine video. So you know a lot about cork taint, right? Or don't you? Whatever you already know, I am sure you are going to learn something today, because these are my top 5 facts that you didn't know about cork taint. So we are going to be discussing why so many wines are annoyingly corked. I am probably also going to give you another 198 facts about cork taint, so stay tuned, fasten your seatbelt, open your ears wide, and let's go! So fact number 1, cork taint is not given by only one molecule. You probably think it's only TCA, and we'll talk about this. No, it's given by a family of molecules. First, I am going to be talking for about 30 seconds about the chemistry of cork taint, because hey, this is a video about things you didn't know about cork taint, right? Also because the chemistry, even though it's not super fun, it's gonna help us understand where the cork taint comes from, and this will help us a lot later on in the video. So bear with me a little here. Cork taint comes from a molecule called anisole, and this right here is what a molecule of anisole looks like. On top of that molecule are going to be glued some atoms of chlorine. The most common is that 3 atoms of chlorine are glued on top of the anisole, and that's why we attribute cork taint to TCA, trichloroanisole. But sometimes only 2 atoms of chlorine are stuck on the anisole, and that's called dichloroanisole, DCA, or sometimes 4 atoms of chlorine are stuck on the anisole, so that's the tetrachloroanisole, TCA, as well. But sometimes this anisole also gets glued atoms of bromine, 2, 3 or 4 atoms of bromine, so that's DBA, TBA and TBA. So I know it's all a little boring, but what you didn't know is that cork taint is not only TCA, it's not only attributed to one molecule, but rather a family of molecules. So where do these molecules come from? Essentially, anisole and the gluing of chlorine atoms on it are made by microorganisms that are present in wood, including cork. So something you probably also didn't know is that the origin of cork taint can be other things than the cork itself. Cork taint can come from a variety of contamination sources. Virtually any wood, any source of wood that gets any close to the wine can contaminate and give the wine cork taint. And that's because any wood that's got those microorganisms on it and some chlorine in the environment. And let's remind everyone that chlorine, including the chlorine in your tap water, chlorine is volatile, so it flies and it evaporates and it flies and it floats in the air like this. So any wood that is a little humid with microorganisms on it are going to capture some of the chlorine and stuck it into the anisole. Then the anisole is also volatile and it can go into the wine. And this process starts at the winery itself. Many wineries, many old wineries that had wood structures or wood pallets or any source of bad, humid, rotten wood into it can have entire tanks contaminated by cork taint. So cork taint is not always all about the cork. Cork taint can even come from your own cellar. If you store your bottles in your humid, full of fungi cellar with some wood into it, the fungi may capture some of the chlorine in the air and stuck it onto anisole, and the anisole may slowly but surely go through the corks of your bottles and contaminate your wine. So beware where you store your bottles, but it is true that in most cases the contamination of cork taint comes from the cork itself, because the microorganisms that live on the cork have captured some chlorine and stick some TCA and the family of bad molecules into the cork. And of course, when the cork is tapped into the bottle, it contaminates the wine. And this is why it is believed that between 1 and 7% of all wines that are bottled under cork are contaminated some way or another by cork taint. This leads us to fact number 2. if you can't identify the smell of cork taint into a wine, it doesn't mean that the wine is not affected by cork taint and TCA. Essentially, in this you already know, cork taint smells like wet cardboard, fungus, rotten wood, old moldy dust. But that's if the concentration of TCA in your wine is high enough that you can actually smell and identify the TCA. In many cases, the concentration of TCA is very low, so it doesn't really smell bad or smell like cardboard. But what TCA does is that it fades out all the other aromas of your wine. It fades out all the fruity aromas and all the spices and all the oak influence as well. So it fades, it flattens the aromatic profile of your wine. So sometimes when you open a bottle of wine that you know and you find it a little tainted, a little shy, and you don't understand why, it may be because it is cork taint, even though it doesn't smell opulently or really bad. But TCA does that. And fact number 3, cork taint doesn't only smell bad, it also tastes bad. It affects the taste of the wine as well. And often you've probably already tried a cork taint wine. It smells horribly bad and it sticks to your taste buds and your nose because it's a very powerful, very pungent aroma, very pungent fault. But it also destroys the palate structure, it also destroys the palate textures or the balance of the wine, and it sort of affects your taste bud and makes the wine taste really harsh. So that's why cork taint is so horrible, because it smells horrible and it also tastes horrible. So even if you taste your wine like this, it's still going to taste horrible. And it gets even worse with our fact number 4. We are not all equal against cork taint. Cork taint and the family of molecules that cause it can be smelt, can be perceived by our nose and our senses at very tiny, very low concentration in our wine. And that's also why so many wines are affected, because just a tiny bit, sometimes as low as 1 part per million, can affect the wine, can make the wine dull or smell bad. But we're not equipped with as good senses to smell and identify TCA. Some people can smell it at 1 part per million, some people can smell it at 20 parts per million, 50 parts per million. Sometimes it says that untrained palate can not even detect it below 100 parts per million. So you could be smelling it really well because you detect it at 1 part per million, but someone else may not be able to detect it at 50 parts per million, so be 50 times less sensitive to that molecule. And this is why sometimes you smell it and your friends don't. Sometimes you smell it and the sommelier at your restaurant doesn't. Sometimes you bring back the bottle at your wine shop and you say, hey, this is corked. And the guy at the shop, it may not be because he doesn't know his wine very well. He may simply be that he doesn't smell TCA really well, or as well as you do. And this leads us to point, in fact, number 5. You can reject a wine at a restaurant if it is corked, or you can return it to a wine shop if it is corked. Not everyone knows this, but the producer is responsible for reimbursing the shop or providing a new bottle to a shop if a corked wine bottle is returned. And it's the producer's responsibility to go back to the cork manufacturer and say, hey, I had this many corks that were faulty. So this is a bit of a controversial topic, obviously, in the retail and the restaurant industry, because wine shops don't want to be dealing with returning bottles, and sommeliers don't want to be getting back to the producer and trying to get a replacement bottle. But it is your right as a consumer to do so. So how do we avoid cork taint, you may be wondering, well, unfortunately for a wine that is corked under natural cork, even agglomerated cork, there's not a whole lot of solutions for us. Many cork manufacturers test the cork, and they're getting a lot better these days at doing it to eliminate any cork that may be contaminated. So the percentage of affected bottle has dramatically gone down over the last 10 or 20 years. The only way to avoid completely cork contamination, or almost entirely, because it's not always about the cork, sometimes it happens at the winery, so it's never going to be a 100%. But the best way to avoid cork contamination are plastic corks, but they're not fantastic for aging the wines, or screw caps, and those can be really good for aging wines as well. I'm actually going to be releasing soon a video about comparing aged white wines under cork and under screw caps, so stay tuned. This is going to come in a few weeks. Stay tuned to the channel for this. But screw caps are absolutely the best way to avoid cork, and that's why countries like New Zealand and Australia are really pushing and leading the way toward more and more screw cap. But many countries prefer and love their cork and uncorking the bottle still. So this was me. I hope you enjoyed these videos. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about cork taint. Also, before I let you go, question of the day: do you like your wine, do you prefer your wine under cork, and do you like the gesture of opening the cork, the traditional gesture, or would you be ready to be moving towards buying more and more wines bottled under screw cap? Or do you hate corks, natural corks, because of the cork taint? Also, let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know where you're from when you're answering that question, because this seems to be geography sensitive questions, and people from different countries have different opinions, but I'd be very interested to know your opinion and see where everyone stands. I will be very soon on this channel reviewing some Chinese wines. This is going to be my first time trying Chinese wine, so I'm very curious to see and taste what they taste like, and that might interest you as well. And I'm going to be reviewing some English sparkling wines. Very curious to see what it tastes like. So if you like wine, if you like learning about wine, stay tuned to the channel, and I will see you soon in the wine world. Cheers.